By 1988, the state of Punjab had reached a breaking point. Civil authority had vanished, replaced by the open rule of militant groups. The atmosphere was so thick with the threat of violence that even local police officers abandoned their uniforms, fearing they would be targeted the moment they stepped into the street. Conventional military responses were failing. Sending heavy battalions into these neighborhoods resulted in physical destruction, but it didn't solve the core issue. The state was fighting a visible army, but the real enemy was invisible, deeply embedded within the very population the government was trying to protect. Intelligence officer Ajit Doval proposed a high-risk alternative. He believed that to dismantle the network, the state had to stop trying to overpower it from the outside. Instead, someone had to get inside the enemy's mind and dismantle their logic from within. Doval shed his rank and identity. He left behind his weapons and any hope of backup. Dressed in a simple kurta and assuming the persona of a Muslim businessman, he walked alone into the center of the conflict, the fortified hideouts where the law no longer existed. This was the ultimate gamble. Doval had to enter a space where every guard was looking for a reason to kill him, and use nothing but psychological leverage to tear the entire system apart. The first meeting with the commander was a gauntlet. In this room, a single flicker of hesitation or a bead of sweat would be interpreted as a confession. Doval wasn't just facing a man, he was facing a system designed to detect and eliminate any outsiders. The commander immediately tried to break him, accusing him of being an undercover officer. Doval didn't panic or plead for his life. He answered with a cold, almost insulting logic. He pointed out that no police officer would be reckless enough to walk into this room alone without a weapon. The commander upped the stakes, ordering Doval to execute a captive to prove he belonged to the cause. Doval flatly refused. He stated that he was a businessman here to make a profit, not a common killer. By refusing to follow the commander's script, he forced the commander to treat him as a peer, a professional who couldn't be easily intimidated. This strategy works because it defies the predator's expectations. When you stop acting like a victim and refuse to play by their rules, you strip away their sense of control and force them to reevaluate who they are dealing with. Once accepted into the inner circle, Doval began his real work, mapping the network's hidden skeleton. He identified the corrupt officials providing protection, the international money trails, and the specific routes used by weapon suppliers. He also found the network's greatest weakness. The group was far from united. It was split between those driven by a violent ideology and those who were only in it for the money. These two groups already shared a quiet, simmering resentment for one another. Doval spent weeks quietly nurturing that resentment. To the ideologues, he'd mention how the greedy faction was siphoning off funds for themselves.
To the greedy faction, he'd suggest that the ideologues' recklessness was going to get them all killed. He was just a businessman making observations, but his words acted like slow-acting poison. The suspicion grew from whispers to shouting matches, then to open threats. Finally, the internal pressure became too much. One midnight shootout between the two factions did more damage to the network than years of government raids ever had. They were now spending their bullets on each other. Turning an organization against its own is the most effective form of sabotage. When an army starts looking for traitors in its own barracks, it stops being a threat to the state and starts becoming its own executioner. But every operation has a shelf life. A leak from the outside eventually reached the camp, and Doval's true identity was exposed. The commander realized he had a spy in his kitchen and ordered his immediate execution. Knowing he couldn't outrun the guards, Doval doubled down. He walked directly to the commander and claimed the informant was actually a traitor trying to set the commander up for a fall. He told the commander that killing him was exactly what the real traitor wanted. Because Doval had already spent weeks seeding the camp with mistrust, the commander hesitated. He didn't know who to believe, the man who had been his guest for weeks or the report from the outside. That few seconds of doubt was all Doval needed. While the commander was busy questioning his own men to find the real traitor, Doval slipped into the darkness and vanished into the fields. Suspicion is a powerful tool when a group is already fractured. By planting one last seed of doubt, Doval paralyzed the commander's ability to act, turning the enemy's own fear into a shield for his escape. Doval spent the rest of the night crawling through miles of irrigation ditches and mud. He arrived at a safe house by dawn, exhausted and bloodied, but he had survived the impossible. More importantly, he had brought the evidence. He handed over a small, battered diary containing the names, addresses, and supply routes of every key player in the network. This wasn't just a list of names, it was the network's entire nervous system. At 4 a.m. the following morning, tactical teams used that intelligence to launch simultaneous raids on 11 different hideouts. The operation was a total sweep. The weapon suppliers, the financiers, and the commanders were taken off the board in a single hour. The system that had paralyzed Punjab for years collapsed in a single morning because its foundations had been hollowed out. During interrogation, the captured commander seemed less angry than he was bewildered. He had built a fortress, surrounded himself with guards, and vetted every man, yet he had been dismantled by a single unarmed visitor who sat at his table and simply pointed out the cracks that were already there. Ultimately, Doval proved that true intelligence isn't about the size of your arsenal, it's about understanding the human mind well enough to make a dangerous system destroy itself from the inside out.